And welcome back to Pokemon Team Videos. Hold on one second, I'm going to stop talking for a second because I need to see if something's coming up. Okay, yeah, if you hear a little bit of a sound in the background, I have my fan going because it's hot out there now, folks. We are full-blown into late spring or early summer now. So yeah, if you hear a noise in the background, that's my fan going. But no, this one comes to us from Parker Smith. And seeing as I did He-Man, it would make sense to do his arch-enemy, Skeletor, yes! What is my Pokemon team? It's weird. Skeletor comes into a category of characters when I do these teams that isn't as difficult as others, but is difficult in unique ways. So what I mean by that is this. So let's get into it. Let's get over the ones that I knew for... there was actually no Pokemon I knew for a fact had to be on the team. That, first off, was very much key. There are elements of this guy where I knew I had to find Pokemon. For example, just appearance-wise alone, there isn't many Pokemon that are a skull. I mean, you have Cubone. Cubone doesn't fit... who wears the skull of his mother on his head, but Cubone doesn't fit for a Skeletor. Nor does a Marowak, quite frankly. So I'm like, okay, is there any other Pokemon that's like a skeleton or skeletal in appearance? And really, that's one of the few Pokemon we've actually not had yet. I mean, actually, there's plenty of Pokemon out there we really haven't had yet. And if you want more proof of that, just look up any fan-made Pokemon region or fan-made Pokemon decks. There are plenty of inspirations out there. The idea that Game Freak's like, oh, we don't want to... I don't know if this is their mentality, but we're running out of ideas for Pokemon. It's like, bullshit. Go online and find something. Pay someone $5,000 to use their idea. I'm sure they'll take the money and just be happy that their idea gets memorialized. But I'm like, okay, there aren't any real skeleton Pokemon. So I had to venture out a little bit for that. And what I ultimately came to is this. So there is Duskull, which has skull in its name, and it's a little ghost with a skull on its face. But Dusclops, not so much. It's more like a mummy with an eye. And I ultimately decided to go with Dusknoir. Now, Dusknoir still isn't exactly a skeleton. There is no real perfect match for Skeletor in terms of appearance. However, it is kind of the Grim Reaper. And don't get me wrong, it's not Death incarnate. That would be Yveltal. But it is the Grim Reaper. It takes souls, which is usually depicted as a skeleton in a hood, as Skeletor is. Also, being the final evolution in that line means it's the most powerful version you can get in that line. So I decided to go that route for a quote-unquote appearance and level of power. Ghost types can learn quite a few array of moves. Now, one Pokemon, when I immediately was reading up Skeletor's bio and like personality and all that, I'm like, yeah, this one for some reason just clicks. A Pokemon that represents his quest for power, consuming, his greed, his desire, all that is and never satisfied until he has all the power. A Guzzlord, for some reason, fits so well in my mind for Skeletor's team. This would probably be his ace in the whole Pokemon, because while, spoilers, there is another legendary on this team, I don't think it really comes even close to this. Guzzlords are huge, powerful monsters of Pokemon. They consume everything and they are never satisfied, which represents his thirst for power and lack of satisfaction. So I think a Guzzlord, and honestly, it has an aesthetic appeal too. This honestly looks a bit more skull-like than Duskull does, or Dusknoir does. I mean, it's got a giant gaping maw that looks like Skeletor's face a little bit, so that kind of works. This next one I'm going to get out of the way real quick, mostly because I was kind of struggling late into the game to figure it out. Not struggling, but I was having difficulty. I put a Malmar on the team, mostly because Dark, Psychic. Dark is considered the evil type in Japan. That's what it translates out to a lot of times. And Malamars just make sense for guys who are evil tyrants wanting to rule the world, have magical abilities, maybe use mind control on occasions. Malamars just make sense because they are one of the few Pokemon that is legitimately depicted not just as the type, dark/evil, but is depicted as being evil. So Malamars just make sense on these kind of teams. These last three, though. Okay, so one of the weird abilities he has is he always has the ability to return to Snake Mountain. He can basically teleport back there. So I knew I needed a Pokemon that could learn Teleport. Sounds simple enough. Surprisingly, though, there aren't a lot of Pokemon that can learn Teleport. There's like about a dozen or so, which sounds like a lot, but when you, and I'm like I said, a dozen or so. There might be like closer to 50, maybe even 20. But when you're talking about a now roster of Pokemon that's just over 900 right now, that's not a lot of Pokemon. So I'm like, okay, which one fits the best? And none of them really fit well. So I ultimately went with Gallade. Gallade is a fighting psychic type, which ultimately lends itself to Skeletor, who, while a master sorcerer and magic user, is also quite a capable hand-to-hand combatant. And we'll get a Pokemon on the team later, coming up in a little bit, that is more indicative of that aspect of Skeletor, that he's actually a foe capable of going toe-to-toe physically with He-Man. Which, whenever we get that Malmar versus Skeletor death battle, and you know that's eventually going to come, that's one of those ones that's more highly requested because they're both He-Man and Lino fought it out, so you know they're going to pit their respective enemies against each other. That's one of the reasons why I'm like, oh no, Skeletor probably could easily take out, maybe not easily, but I think is more powerful than Malmar because he goes toe-to-toe with He-Man, who is insanely powerful. He might not be as physically strong as He-Man, but he is insanely powerful. Skeletor. But there is one thing I knew I wanted, and that's the more mystical, magical aspects of Skeletor, because he is a master of magic. And he wields a staff that has like an hourglass and a ram's head on there. And I'm like, okay, is there anything that represents that? Sadly, there is not just like a staff Pokemon. But there are Pokemon that do have items that they carry. A la Marowak with its Bone Club. A la, apparently Samurott does carry swords with them. So there are Pokemon that actually carry items. And the one that fit here, weirdly enough, was Delphox. Because it evolves and it has that stick that is a staff. It uses, quote-unquote, magic. Now, it's a Psychic Fire type. And up until we had Fairies, Psychic was the closest we had to Magic. But now we don't. Now we actually have Fairy. And Fairy kind of comes more closer to Magic than anything else. Still, Delphox actually, I think, works well. It is a sorcerer-inspired Pokemon. I've actually never hated Delphox. I know this Pokemon gets a lot of hate. I still like Chestnut the best. I actually am a very staunch Chestnut defender. With the exception of, I think the color needed to be different. I think, honestly, the color needed to be inverted. Honestly, its shiny looks far better. But the color needed to be inverted where all that white on it, I think, needed to be green, and all the other colors needed to be like a lighter color. And that armor would have looked a lot cooler on Chestnut. Still, I'm a staunch defender of Chestnut. I actually like Chestnut quite a bit. But Delphox and Greninja is a good design. I do not hate on Greninja at all. It's a very smooth transitional evolution between that Frogadier, or Froakie Frogadier, and Greninja. But honestly, yeah, I've always liked Delphox. It's not amazing. It's not my favorite. In fact, it's probably my least favorite of the three. But I like Delphox fine. I've never quite understood the hate of it. But either way. But yeah, that to represent his staff in his sorcerer-like way. So the last Pokemon, as I mentioned, there is one other legendary on the team. And as I also mentioned, I needed a Pokemon that really represented the fact that he is a very capable hand-to-hand fighter and can go toe-to-toe with He-Man more than a couple times. And for me, I went with Urshifu. Now, I went with Urshifu Single Strike. This is due to the fact that, A, Rapid Strike implies a lot more agility than Skeletor's really demonstrated. And B, and the more important aspect, Single Strike is a dark fighting type, whereas Rapid Strike is a water fighting type. So the fact that he's a dark fighting type means that he represents more of the evil aspect of it. And the more dark, maybe even dirty hand-to-hand tactics, or dirty fighting tactics that Skeletor could employ. So ultimately, that was the why I went with Single Strike. But that is, in my humble opinion, as a YouTuber on YouTube, on the tubes of you, Skeletor's Pokemon team. Tell me, what do you think of this team? Let me know in the comments below. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll see you folks later. I've got to actually pre-record a couple videos for tomorrow because it's the week of What If coming up this week. God, I've often said this. Between the 2 weeks I have to do, I prefer the week of who would win. It's easier to do like a 10 to 15 minute just versus video talking than it is to do 7 whole days constantly updating stories and doing things of different videos going on or creating stories. So, yeah, one is a little easier than others. But until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you folks for the next one.